If you see me sweating, I'm still trying to get the electrician into the mountains, and it's take a little bit longer than I thought. So there's no AC. It's a hot one in the mountains today, guys. I got a good podcast for you today. I love studying football. There's a lot of places I go to study football. NFL.com is usually the last place I go to study football, but every once in a while they have great articles. And the last couple of weeks they've had a bunch of really great articles. So I'm going to go over an article and apply it to our Dolphins. It's called Scheme to Fuel Seahawks Revival on D. And you say, you probably know, but if you don't know, like, well, I'm a Dolphins fan, Curtis, what do I care about Seahawks? Mike Macdonald was the DC with the Ravens. Weaver was under him, a few other guys. And he went to the Seahawks to become the head coach. So he's going to go, Brooks is going to go over the defense of Macdonald, and it's going to be mostly what Weaver's going to run. Weaver's going to add his own stuff in here. We don't know exactly what's going on. Talent changes things as well. But there's a lot to learn. It's a great article, and it's going to help give you an overview understanding of what we're doing here. And there's a lot of good that's going to come to your mind when you hear this, and it will dial in a little bit as well. Okay, so again, check it out. Scheme to Fuel the Seahawks Revival on D. Now, one thing before I get in here is the crux of the article is it's becoming the hottest new defense. And I've talked about this for a while, that football ends on the field, but it starts in the minds of the GM, the vision they have to push the talent on the field, to create this model of what they want to do. And the coordinators and the head coach, from a philosophical and a conceptual level, to create this idea and how to take the talent and drive the idea. In the NFL, ideas find weaknesses in the ideas of the day. And that idea, that new idea, finds the weaknesses, takes advantage of it, and rises to the top, and everybody wants to keep their job, and so they kind of copycat it, and it becomes a big thing. Fangio was like that a few years ago. And we'll get into this one. The Seahawks, Carroll was before that. When the passing was all over the place, he had such huge talent on D because of the unbelievable drafts they had the first 2 or 3 years. They ran cover 3. And that became the big idea. And then Fangio kind of became the big idea after that. And this article is kind of saying maybe Mike Macdonald's defense is going to be the idea today. Really good article. So before I get into that, guys, I want to give you a shout out for likes, subscribes, comments, and views. All that stuff keeps me in the biz to study this for a living. And I'm really grateful for that. I love this game. I love not having to my boss doesn't see what I'm doing. I'm studying. I can do this for a living, and it's thanks to you guys. So I want to give you a shout out, and a shout out to Ace Spread, my sponsor, because without the two of you, this show ain't going down. Ace Per Head's betting software is the premier white label platform for bookies to manage their players and grow their sportsbook operation. Click the link in the description below to get set up in minutes. Ask for the Curtis promo and get a special introductory discount. Scheme to Fuel Revival on D. Pete Carroll, the Seahawks, unprecedented heights. Reading too fast. Pete Carroll took the Seahawks to unprecedented heights for the franchise by utilizing the cover 3 scheme. That was like a later tail end of, the 2010s and early 2010s, 13 or so. And then as the Legion of Boom the talent left, the defense kind of crumbled. And before I get into it, simple, super, super simple defenses. Probably the most simple ever was the Tampa 2. Okay, it was a cover 2 with the linebackers playing deep in coverage, and it relied all about talent and the front 4 getting after them. Very, very simple. Dungy's defense kind of did the same thing 95% of the time, but it got away with it because of all the talent. If you are very simple, you need high-end talent. But as you get more complicated, it's harder to do it, but it offsets the need of talent, and it allows you to find guys that are smart to run that scheme. And it's easier to find guys that are smart and disciplined than it is to find guys that are awesomely talented. And it's part of the reason why Flores had problems, because he didn't have the 2 cover corners to play man, to get up there and cover for a long period of time so the rest of the guys could do their thing. And when one guy was injured, the whole defense kind of was wonky. So you have one side, which is Fangio, which is very complicated. It's a lot of zones, intelligence-driven, except for the front. And then you got the other side, which is super simple, the Tampa too, which is really all about talent. And then you got stuff in the middle, and that's what this McDonald defense is about. So Mike McDaniel coming on board and implementing the hottest scheme in football. A seasoned assistant coach with Ravens, McDonald spent a year in the University of Michigan. He directed the number one scoring D last year, utilizing tactics and strategies that could sprout through the league. With three of his former assistants, Baltimore, Zach Orr, who's not a DC, Miami Dolphins, Anthony, and Tennessee's Dennard Wilson, and his successor at Michigan, the Chargers' Jesse Minter, landing defensive play calling gigs this offseason. So you get the idea. Some guy creates the idea, becomes hot, and he's got the little tree. We all know that, the West Coast and whatever, the whole deal. So this is what we got here. And it's this idea that's having success. It had success with the Ravens. And there's a lot of that stuff that you're seeing here that's kind of Flores did to some degree. And there's a lot of similarities. But this defense could become the new idea. And it will be very interesting to see if that plays out. Now, the reason it's becoming the new idea is for a few things. Now, as a scheme director who features simulated pressure and blitzes that were popularized in the college game, McDonald deserves credit for crafting game plans that enable defenders to play fast and free between the lines. Though the system looks complicated to the offense, X's and O's are easily digestible for the defenders. Flores was the same way. It's not going to look as the same way. He's just loading the box up with the zero and stuff. But he can kind of create this thing that's very sort of simple, the overall idea of what we're trying to do, and you can bring in different packages and it's all the same. But when you got all these bodies moving around and come up to the line of scrimmage, it's very hard to decipher on the fly for the quarterback. So in a lot of ways, it's very simple, and in some ways, it appears complex. Now, you don't need as much talent as a Tampa, and you're not going to be as difficult to get the right guys to fill your scheme and to get it going right away like Fangio. It's in the middle where we'll find out. So after speaking to players and coaches familiar with the defense, I believe the secret sauce in McDonald's ability to teach his scheme. And Flores was the same way. Remember, we would talk about that stuff? And so you can get rookies, you can get guys in free agency, and they don't have to be marinated too long. And that's a big deal. That's a lot of help. Now, I'll get into that later. Anyway, categorizing his play calls in buckets that make the learning easy for everyone. McDonald teaches defenders the entire concept instead of only their assignment, creating a plug-and-play system that enables coaches to run the same blitzes and pressures with different personnel packages. And when you got a guy like Cam Smith, you got all these different linebackers, you got all these different edge players, you got all these different corners, you could tailor, say, hey, this offense has this kind of receiver. I want to bring this guy a little bit more in. This offensive lineman, he's got a problem with that. I can bring in, say, Chubb, who match well with him. And you could bring all these guys in, but when they're understanding the overall concept, you can move them in and different guys in. It's all the same thing. But when the quarterback's there, it's not so easy to diagnose. And this is great for us. We have a 2-year window. It's going to be a little tough for us because Chubb and Phillips are going to take the time to come in. So you want to get stuff happening right now for Kamara and for Chop, big time stuff, and all the guys we got in here. And then, next year is going to be key because then everybody will be marinated. You can even maybe bring a couple other guys, and it's not that big a deal. So we can get a nice hot start, get guys in there, and hopefully there won't be too much player-driven failure. This is a great thing for this defense and for this team and for our chances this year. So to the offense, a different presentation of the same blitz creates chaos, but the defense is simply executing its favorite blitz patterns roles. The approach is frequently touted by defensive coordinators around the league, but few have executed like McDonald and his staff. From playing a game of musical chairs in practice with defenders running through the same blitz from various positions to utilizing one-word play calls that set the front, pressures, pattern, and coverages, McDonald finds a way to unlock his players' talents through creative scheming that enables them to play at a breakneck pace. And so this is really, really good. And you're going to understand why guys like Holland and Cam and guys will be happy with this. This is not a knock on Fangio either, because Fangio is everybody wanted to do the Fangio thing. It was highly successful. It's just different strokes for different folks, different situations, different talent groups. I was looking at Kelly, who was saying everybody didn't like Fangio. Wilkins had a career year and made a career payday. I think that's overblown, but if you got a guy like Ramsey, who's a big money guy, and he forces himself off teams, it could be a real big headache if he doesn't like what's going on. You've got to kind of bend to that if you bring these guys in. You got guys like Holland. Holland doesn't want to have a down year last year. He wants to be hot. He's not really thinking team as much as he's, I'm going to get paid. And so this will allow guys to get paid, be quick, but there is a cap a little bit on the top. And you can see what happened with the Ravens last year. Sometimes when teams figure this stuff out and they got the talent to offset it, you don't have the complexity to overrun it. But for the most part, this is a really good system for us. And it is enough complexity and enough simplicity that if you got the right talent, you'll have a defense that can take you to the Super Bowl. That's good. So the Seattle in Seattle, McDonald inherits a talented defense with core playmaker veterans that could make the scheme pop. So it's not like you don't need talent. You see, he has a talented core to make the scheme pop. The scheme, no matter what it is going to be driven by talent, but some are more talented, some are more disciplined, some more intelligent oriented, and then position groups too, is sometimes you need more talent on the D-line and less in the secondary, whatever, you know what I mean? McDonald might have a more talented unit in Seattle than he did with the Ravens last season. Not sure about that. That statement might be hard to fathom based on the Seahawks' defensive struggles 2023. However, the core of Leonard Williams, Dramont Jones, Jaron Reed, Nwosu, Wolin, Witherspoon is a collection of potential rock stars waiting to break out. Now, they could be, but as so far, there's some things, I don't want to get into too much into Seattle, with a handful of free agent signees, Dotson, Baker, Jerome Baker, Jenkins, and a few breakout candidates, along with some rookies, Byron Murphy II. And that's the thing, I want to focus on Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy. This is something, there's a parallel here that I'm seeing that I didn't really see before with the Dolphins' talent. I'm going to get into that in a second. So you do need talent. And if you notice, they drafted Byron Murphy II. And if you look at our talent group, so when you look at Deshaun Hand and you look at this defense, there's some similarities between the way he plays and what he can do and Byron Murphy II. Murphy's 6 foot tall. He's about 295. Hand is 6'3", 297. But there are similarities in the way these guys play. And when you take Sealer and you look at him, and he's a comparable for Leonard Williams. But when McDonald went there, he had Leonard Williams, but he went out and got Byron Murphy II because they need that inside. They had Pierce and Jones with the Ravens. And someone I really respect is showing me like, well, you don't need the best second guy, D-tackle, in order to push a good scheme. There's almost nobody really has it. But clearly this was a priority. And so I do see some comparisons. I think Byron Murphy's going to end up being better than Deshaun Hand, but Deshaun Hand is pretty darn good. So this defense that we have is going to be able to put all these different pieces, the Kohu and the Needham and the Cam Smith and the Poyer and the Holland and the Ramsey and the Fuller and move all these pieces around. And they're all going to study and go, this is what I'm supposed to do. And whatever position group they bring in, they're all going to understand that. But in the center, it's going to be important to have the pieces to hold that together. And the Murphy and the Williams and the Sealer and the Hand really kind of are comparable in a way. So given the talent and the athleticism of the Seahawks secondary, McDonald could mix and match coverage concepts. Same thing with what we got over here in Miami, and maybe even to a better degree. I really like what we get. So Weaver is getting a lot of the stuff he needs. And you see the bloviation that's happening, the admiration for what McDonald's receiving with the Seahawks, but you can easily port that over to what Weaver's receiving here in Miami. And for the most part, I do think that Weaver's going to have the tools to do what he wants to do, because it's really a strong match between the Seahawks and the Dolphins as far as overall talent, although I would give a slight edge to the Seahawks on their line until Chubb and Phillips come along. So this would allow overall deception to go to another level. And that's the thing. Deception is key. And the deception, like Art of War, All War is Deception, will help us offset some of these problems and cause problems for these offenses. We have the talent to mix and match our coverages, to mix and match our pressures, and it's going to be basic enough where guys can keep coming in, different packages coming in, and it's not going to be like what happened with Fangio, with guys who had huge player-driven failure. And again, it's not to knock Fangio's system. That Eagles defense will do really well. Fine. Weaver will come here and what it looks like, hopefully do really well. He should. Only problem is that interior. If we can keep those two components inside, but then we got Peely, which I think is a piece that could step up for us. And then you got, I think, a higher level of edge talent here when you had Kamara, Barrett, Chop, and then Phillips and Chubb when they arrive. So the pieces will need to come together quickly. The combination of scheme, learning environment, high standards could result in a similar surge in one of Seattle's defense that enhanced them in the early 2010s, when the Legion of Boom dominated the league and the Seahawks emerged as a perennial title contenders. Defense wins championships. And I think that if we'd stuck with Fangio, that defense would have been fine too. But with the short window we had, the transition, this is as good a defense to bring in here as possible. And it's really exciting for us as Dolphin fans, because is it going to be good enough? But then we could be seeing the rise of the big idea, the new big idea. I don't know if it's going to be that way, but I do know that our talent has been constructed in a way to give Weaver, for the most part, all he needs to do what he needs to do. The only caveat that I would say is that if they can't stop the run, then a lot of the stuff is going to crumble. That's the main problem. And that's why Wilkins leaving does hurt us. But again, a Hand, Sealer, Peely possibly stepping up, and other guys maybe we haven't seen yet could offset it all. And if we can stop the run with what we're seeing here and this secondary and what Weaver can do as far as a person and as far as a coordinator and a guy who played, this could be a very, very good season for the Dolphins. And if you pair that good defense with a rising offense, maybe some of the doubting Thomases could be wrong, but it's not written in stone. There's a lot that goes from here to there. But this is exciting stuff, guys, from a conceptual level and from the Dolphins level. So anyway, I hope it wasn't too deep. But I just think that even if you're a fan who doesn't really want to get too deep into it, understanding the situation is going to help you enjoy the game more. So anyway, good stuff. Curtis, Garrett, I got to remember. I got to keep practicing, Garrett. Curtis saying, be well, go Fins. Curtis out. Start building your own online sports book today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.